We are live, more or less, from Las Vegas. I'm Rick Rosen with Mark Anthony. This is Good Sports on GoodSportsMedia.com. What's happening, Mark?
It's a beautiful Thursday in Vegas, baby. We are going to have a 90-degree weekend, so they say.
Do you realize how many frickin' people would be here if the weather was like this all the time, Mark? I mean, spring has sprung. Now, summer, we drive a few people off, but
right.
If this is not Chamber of Commerce weather, I've never seen it.
This is a beautiful day. So, what's up with sports?
You know, anybody can report scores and this is going to happen in that game or whatever. Here's something you don't see every day. Dean Smith, the legendary coach at North Carolina, played at Kansas for Fog Allen, and you know, I mean, he is the pure blood, the thoroughbred lineage goes through Dean Smith. He died this last year, about 48 hours before Jerry Tarkanian died. In his will, he left every single player that lettered on his team $200. And with instructions for them to have a nice dinner on old Coach Smith. And I think that's incredible. You know, they would have, of course, smashed his testicles under the nearest road grader if he'd bought a kid a McDonald's, a hungry kid. But now he doesn't give a tinker's damn, and he's giving every one of them kids, I think they said it comes to about $36,000.
$36,000, yep.
Yeah, which is, you know, a mere pittance, I suppose, to some multimillionaires. But it's the gesture much more so, Mark, than the actual expenditure. You know, what a classy guy. What a just absolute wonderful. Who I've never heard of it before. I don't think we'll ever hear of it again. Certainly not the first time ever again. But this is the first time I can remember that a coach left in his will. Here's something. Screw the NCAA. Yeah. So
come and get me.
Just something you don't see all the time.
Yeah, really. Yeah. What are you going to do against me?
And we are on. Yeah, that's right. And you know, we are in the biggest time for basketball. Notre Dame beating the crap out of Wichita State, and Wichita State seemingly shot their wad in beating Kansas, a team they don't get to play very often because Kansas will not schedule Wichita State, and Wichita State went into the NCAA's into the championship game undefeated, or into the NCAA's undefeated last year, much as Kentucky is this year, and you know, lost, didn't walk away with the championship. This is the guys that were just a step behind a couple of the guys that left last year that were the stars of the team. They certainly have stepped it up. They don't have to apologize to anyone, but at this point, I believe Notre Dame is beating them by almost 20 points. So if you have Wichita State, as I do, you are shit out of luck, as it's known in the business. Man,
this has been
to play another day.
Yeah, this has been one of those years that's just all you know, it seems like everyone's major predictions just kind of like out the window. It's just been, you know, everyone they thought would win lost.
Except for Kentucky and Notre Dame. I mean, the team that just beat Wichita State, Notre Dame has somewhat come out of the woodwork. Real basketball aficionados, real, you know, guys that follow. They joined the Atlantic Coast Conference, the home of Michael Jordan in North Carolina, and Dean Smith, and North Carolina State, and Wake Forest, and on and on and on. You go right down the list, and Duke, and they're all in the ACC. And Notre Dame joined because they needed a league. It made, I guess, financial sense to them. Here they win the league, they win the tournament, they win the league. They are representing people. Certainly didn't think they were any better than Duke or North Carolina, who are both alive right now. But my goodness, Notre Dame's serving notice, hey, you're going to have to deal with Notre Dame to win the championship. And if you're looking for a dark horse, it may be them Fighting Irish that have a real chance at winning this. I always like to take a team, Mark, that's playing well now. And they are playing well now, although that 20-point lead is now down to 12. There's not much time. 2:06 left in the second, and Notre Dame is putting it to Wichita State. And from now on, it's going to be a free throw shooting contest and a 3-point shooting contest on the other end for Wichita State. You just can't spot somebody, 15 points. So anyhow, Kentucky plays later on. And that will be interesting. North Carolina and Wisconsin are playing a real close game, Mark. North Carolina, the guys that people thought if Duke doesn't win it, North Carolina will in the ACC, and instead Notre Dame is the guys that got to hold that trophy. But North Carolina and Wisconsin played a tough game, and Wisconsin, a number 1 seed. A lot of people, my friend Bobby the Owl, does not think that Wisconsin has what it takes to win this NCAA championship. And Bobby the Owl, the guy that used to, I guess in the good old days, the really good old days, when the Stardust was the epicenter of sports betting, Bobby the Owl helped make the line for college basketball. And he's about as astute as it gets. And it's we did some work together, utilizing his line making skills, and it was always a pleasure to work with Bobby. And he remains one of the sharpest guys you'll ever talk to on basketball. He likes Arizona. He says if anybody's going to beat Kentucky, it would be Arizona. But I would say probably 6 weeks ago, Mark, pretty well into the season, but with plenty of games left, Bobby talked about putting $25 down on Kentucky on the money line and parlaying it over and over and over again on the chance that they would win out and go undefeated. Indiana, the last team to do that in 1976. So I haven't talked to Bobby, I've talked to Bobby, but I forgot to ask about that bet. But if he did so, he's in the chips if Kentucky wins out. So
Yes.
anyhow, do you like anybody in the NCAAs? I know Minnesota's not there no more.
Yeah.
Again, ever.
Come on. Minnesota's the bridesmaid, never the bride. Come on. I have always favored Kentucky. I don't know what it is, but I've always favored Kentucky.
Smart guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's rightly so, Mark. They have, again, their 8 guys. You talk about, or at least we do, about teams that are 8 deep in guys that got Division I scholarships, and I believe that's what Findlay Prep did out here in Las Vegas, the team that won the high school national championship a few years ago. Kentucky is 8 deep in McDonald's high school All-Americans. Now, it ain't like there's a couple hundred of them. There are nominees. There are quite a few nominees, and it is quite an honor as a high school basketball player to be nominated as a McDonald's high school All-American. But they are 8 deep in McDonald's high school All-Americans, and the only reason the other 4 weren't is because of the 8 that are. You know what I mean? Those are the guys that beat them out. So you talked about bridesmaids. Even the bridesmaids are pretty good looking on Kentucky's team. So there's plenty of talent there. It would certainly not surprise many that all but 1 or 2 of these guys playing on Kentucky's team now will make an NBA roster, or at least have a real legitimate shot at making the next level of basketball, which for most of them is the NBA. But
right.
They are as talented a team, and God bless John Calipari, man. 5 years down the line, we're going to find he was buying people houses and doing and what college coaches do that win. But I'll tell you what, not only do they do that and do they do the things that it takes to get the talent to do, he gets them to play together. When you have 8 high school All-Americans who were the man on their team and get them all to meld into a pretty cohesive unit, and his guys stay, and then they're there 1 or 2 years, and then they're gone. For the most part, the stars are gone after 1 year, and they go right to the NBA, declare for the draft, and they're gone. Man, Calipari gets these guys with that incredible amount of talent to see the team aspect of basketball, which is what makes it a beautiful game to a lot of us, and he gets them to play together. So there's a story on the internet today, Mark, that says Calipari would like to go back to the NBA. It didn't work for Coach Darkanian. It didn't work for Rick Pitino. It didn't work for a lot of guys who have gone. They come back to college. The grass looked greener,
Yeah.
but having to deal with all those egos, you might get you might get 8 or 10, or at least 5 at one time. Kids that are 19 or 20 years old and know they're going to be millionaires to play together for the common good and college rah-rah and all that. That crap don't fly in the NBA.
Right.
There's guys out there on their own agenda, man, and they know every single stat. And that's that doesn't really matter about your talent level if you're not playing together. Doesn't matter how talented the shooter your small forward is. If he never gets the ball, it doesn't matter. So
Right.
Calipari does get these cats to play together, and I think you're going to see that as this tournament goes on, if anybody's going to beat them, it's because that part of it will have fallen apart. And sometimes these are youngsters. These are kids 1 or 2 years out of high school ball. For the most part, the biggest game they've played in, at least championship-wise up to now, was their high school tournament. Not all of them won that, Mark. So it's this is why they call it March Madness. Thus the hat.
That's the hat.
Um,
Yes, got to have the hat.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it is March Madness, and it is incredible amounts of pressure. But after all is said and done, it is a game. They're simply playing a game. Guys that handle that the best. Again, we're back to, does talent equal experience? Some teams are kind of front loaded on juniors, at least, and seniors. Most of these teams have a fair smattering of young talent that they get out there, and sometimes they jam up. They just haven't been in a particular situation for a while, or if ever, and they don't react correctly, and that's what loses or wins national championships. Michael Jordan took the championship shot for North Carolina and Dean Smith, and he was a
Right.
sophomore, and he let that ball go, and he was as sure. Yeah, I don't think there was a doubter in the house, man. When Jordan let that ball go, that ball was going to go through the basket, and it did. Some guys just don't have that in them to take that shot. They look for an open teammate, and sometimes that comes with experience. But again, guys that can suck it up now, guys that can you hope, or policemen and firemen, and those kind of people that tend to run towards the fire rather than away from it, are the guys that you really want out there at this time. Not everybody has a whole bunch of them. You look, Mark. We get down to, there's only going to be 8 left. We're at Sweet 16. We go to the Elite 8, then the Final 4. So teams tend to beat themselves at this point, unless it's an absolute 1 or 2 point game. Somebody's choked. It's kind of tough to say that, but usually if there's a big difference in a game, it's because we just didn't. And it's a team failure, but everybody kind of that choking part gets contagious.
Right.
And so you need that the older guys in there to kind of calm down the youngsters or whatever. Speaking of teamwork, by the way, North Carolina, I believe, up 53-46 at this point, Mark, halfway through the second half. So they're essentially about to start the fourth quarter of the game. If it were in quarters instead of halves, they're up by 7. North Carolina a 4 seed, Wisconsin a 1. Not a huge surprise on a lot of people's minds. Again, a lot of people thought North Carolina was going to win the ACC, but this is interesting. Kentucky's supposed to win, and sometimes when you're supposed to, you don't. There's what's coming up, Mark. We haven't even given a one moment to this. Is the Kentucky Derby, and it's been a hell of a long time since we've had a Triple Crown winner. When I was a kid, I was actually in basic training when Secretariat won the Triple Crown, and I did every frickin' thing possible. I saw the Kentucky Derby the first Saturday in May. So then it's 2 weeks to the Preakness. So I literally stuck my head through a door, turned on a TV, turned down the sound, watched like I was getting out of my bed to go pee, came back, and I watched it on like the highlights. I don't even think I watched it live. Came back, got back in bed, and then for the Belmont, I'd been there long enough where I happened to be on duty and went to check to make sure the TV was still plugged in and watched Secretariat win by 31 lengths in the Belmont.
Yeah.
And they don't know why it was 31 lengths because they have a timer on the camera. And the first horse through trips the camera to take the photo finish photos. So it only stays on for so frickin' long. And Secretariat was so far ahead of the field to win the Triple Crown in 1973 that none of the other horses came through the camera when it was still operating. It had ran out of time by the time second and third got there. So they just had to make their best, and it wasn't that close. It wasn't like it was a photo finish type deal. But
Right.
there are no photos, are no still photos. They have to use video capture because Secretariat was so far ahead. Triple Crown winners are few and far between. Seattle Slew, Affirmed, Secretariat, those are in my lifetime. And you look at the battle between Affirmed and Alydar. In the all three Triple Crown races, Alydar runs third, and runs second in all three races, and never by more than a head. And imagine to come that close. Imagine bridesmaid time. You talked about bridesmaids. You don't get no more bridesmaidish than that. In all three races of the Triple Crown, Alydar ran second to Affirmed, and then we had Seattle Slew very quickly, and then it's been that long. Longer than it had been between Secretariat and Citation, who was my parents' and our parents' generations, Triple Crown winner, and it's coming up pretty quickly, Mark, and people will start talking about it. People want to bet on it, which is a really stupid frickin' thing. You can go and get the exact same odds. Nothing changes on the odds. The payout is identical. They take the state takes 15% out of every dollar. They don't care who it's on, and they return 85%. And it's like shareholders. That's how pari-mutuel wagering works. And so people will bet on a 20-horse race of really good frickin' horses in the Kentucky Derby and not have an idea what any of the stuff that they read in the literature that's available. Handicapping literature, etc. They won't have a clue what that stuff means, and yet they'll bet on a 20-horse race, and they'll put good money in it. It's a fun day to be in the racing sportsbook. You see some clown that can't spell horse up there betting thousands of dollars.
Yes.
On the same card earlier in the day, there was an 8-horse race, and some of them were really standouts, and some of them look like they should be headed to the glue factory. That's a better race to bet.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, when I first moved here in 2001, I moved here at the end of March, so was just here at the end of the Final Four, and then of course the game, and then I got a job at Texas Station as a bookie, and it was right before the Kentucky Derby, and I mean, guys who bet on horse racing are so funny because they will, they read, they read all of the papers, and it's $2 a show, $3 a place, $8 to win on this horse, and then and then they'll turn around and they'll do another, place win spot. It's like, I don't get it.
They bet against themselves. Which is exactly how, like I say, the track gets 15% or 17% or 18%, whatever the hell it is. It's very close to that, just depending on what track it is and where what state they're in. But that's, generally speaking, 15 to 18% of every dollar spent comes out, much like the vigorish for a bookie. And so they don't give a tinker's damn who wins. No. They don't have a look in that fight. Bet more. We're glad you win. When you win, put it back in, because we get 15% of it every time it's wagered. So that's their lifeblood. Now they've gone to racinos, they call them,
yeah,
where they've put casinos and racetracks because nobody gives a damn about horse racing except for the Breeders' Cup, and the Kentucky Derby, and the Triple Crown races. That's pretty much it. And they're not really sure about the Breeders' Cup. They know it's supposed to be good and all this stuff, but they have, the mile on turf for fillies, and people are like, what the hell does that mean? And so once again, they will spend money, kind of silly, but it really is a huge day. But it is coming up in the Kentucky Derby. They'll have 20 horses out there, and all 20 of them are possible Triple Crown winners. At the end of that race, 2 minutes and some odd seconds later, there's only one of them that is a prospective Triple Crown winner. And that mass of publicity and all that stuff gets to people, much like we were talking about in basketball, Mark, where the pressure tends to get to, I don't know if it gets to the horse, but it changes the horse's schedule. There's a hell of a lot of people at the barn and doing this and that when they've won, so I guess it affects everybody along the way. But that pressure to win a Triple Crown, and you see some of these guys, trainers, who have come so close. Bud Delp with Spectacular Bid came down to the Belmont, and the horse Spectacular Bid had a safety pin go through the bottom of its foot, past the shoe or anything like that. It's a real tough thing to think that the horse stepped on a safety pin on its own that pierced the bottom of its hoof.
Mm-hmm.
But the horse came back sore, and it had the safety pin stuck in there. So either somebody was really good at sticking a safety pin in, where nobody else is watching. There's always hundreds of people around there. Like I say, that's the pressure. But that pressure to win the Triple Crown is enormous, and gets more every year. We had Smarty Brown won the first two. They've had several horses silver. I'll think of the horse's name, Silver or something. Won the first two, and then, man, if you can survive what you think is a huge amount of pressure, singularly in the Preakness, they go to the Belmont, and there's horses that have not run the first two legs, which I think is very unfair, that are trained simply to run the Belmont, which is 1.5 miles, farther than any of these 3-year-olds have ever run. And the Kentucky Derby is 1.25 miles. The Preakness is a 1/16 of a mile shorter than the Kentucky Derby, and then they jump out to that 1.5 miles in the Belmont, and it's like Heartbreak Hill in the Boston Marathon. They come home, boy, and you see horses just like, screw this, just make glue out of me. I'm done, man. I'm just going to trot on in from here if that's okay with you, little fella, and
Hey,
then tend to be the ones I bet.
were you ever? You've been in Vegas for a long time. Were you ever here when they had the horse track behind the Stardust? Or
no.
Okay.
They had one. They had a dog track out on Boulder Highway when I got here, Mark, and we had to travel to see horse racing. I did hear people talk longingly about that track.
Okay. While I'm going down the old memory lane there, then how about the old? They had a Grand Prix track back there, didn't they? Didn't Caesars have a track?
They ran their Grand Prix at Caesars in the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
All that where the forum shops are that. And I've got quite a few photos of that. Mario Andretti, Rick Mears. My very first year out here, I think '83 was the last year that they ran it, Mark. And I just saw the tickets to that somewhere. If I see them again here, I'll grab them. They might be in the other room. But that was an odd deal. They had the Winston West guys there one day. The Indy cars came in the next day, and they had a road course that was basically in the Caesars Palace parking lot, and it was not Grand Prix worthy track wise. Did I say that politically correct?
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see? Kind of jumping off here. We had Grand Prix back here in 2000. What was it? 2006, 2007.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Just trying to go down memory lane here. I really wish they'd bring it back. It was fun.
Yeah, and I think Oscar Goodman, former mayor, was a big proponent. He saw some benefits to Europeanizing Las Vegas for whatever reasons, and certainly thought it might be a big boon to downtown because. But none of the casinos are real interested. Anytime you come up with an idea that starts with, "Well, we need to close the strip," well,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, not good.
we've ruled out those boats right there, and then okay, the rest of you, all right. Well, if they don't want it on the strip, we'll do it downtown. Okay, so it's going to be from 7-Eleven to Arco AM PM, back to Speedy Mart, back to 7-Eleven. That's going to be the route. So that was one of the big factors why it was not successful. They had to close down too much. It
Yeah.
tore up the streets. It didn't bring in the money. They didn't do a good marketing job. There were questions going in, Mark, and I've got the photos of the grand opening, which they had at the World Trade Mart here. For whatever reason, we were in a place that's known for furniture, and they did the grand opening. Julio Cesar Chavez was here. Oscar and the Showgirls showed up, and they put on quite the show down there, and they had a car in as part of the deal. But it just never. I never got it for photos. I never got any request to talk about it on the air. It was just nothing that really excited anybody at the time.
Okay. So,
Do you have any idea what our former mayor Oscar Goodman wanted to do? And it wasn't like I sat across the desk from him and talked about it, but somebody who had done that came to me and said, "How feasible is this?" And it was somebody at one of the hotels, casinos that would overlook Main Street. So you figure out which one I'm talking about. I'm not going to implicate anybody in this, but it was to have the drag races, which are coming up very quickly here out at the strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It was to have the drag races down Main Street. And I was asked how successful that would be. And I said, well, the cars can certainly do it. You'd have to start them way the hell down there and let them stop way the hell over there. But the cars certainly can do it, and the drivers are up to it. But God forbid one thing happens. You would have that car slicing through these casinos or through bystanders. There would be nowhere to watch it from that was safe, that wasn't a hotel room up. You know what I mean? It just made no sense to me whatsoever. It wasn't a well thought out idea. Unless you were going to charge really big money for them rooms. But yeah, can you imagine having the dragsters down there? Where he was talking about the funny cars, John Force and the Top Fuelers and Larry Dixon and Tony Schumacher, etc.
yeah, but that was the era, of course, of Oscar, and I mean everyone was throwing just the most ridiculous ideas out there because it's Vegas. We can do it. Let's build
It's
a
still the
hotel
era of
in
Oscar.
the shape of the Titanic. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
let's
Or have
run
a
funny
mob
cars.
museum.
Yeah.
And this is not to detract from Oscar, but Mark, it is still the era of Oscar. Only a fool does not believe that Oscar and Carolyn Goodman, are tremendously good for Las Vegas, in my opinion. And the only way for Oscar to continue as mayor with the term limits that ran him out of office, or he would still be the mayor himself, was for Carolyn Goodman. Now, she has a mind of her own, but it is very, very much in sync with Oscar's mind. And I don't think for a moment that Oscar Goodman is not still the mayor de facto of Las Vegas, as was Carolyn Goodman when it was Oscar in office. She is his confidant, and she is the person who was next in line to the office. You know what I mean? So it's not like they were not a duo when he was the guy with the title.
I will disagree with you almost 90% of what you just said.
Wow, there's very little evidence to that, but go ahead.
Oscar would have never proposed a stadium, would have never shoved it down the voters' throats like Carolyn. I actually see Carolyn undoing a lot of those things that Oscar did.
Oscar
Now, Now,
Listen, here's what Oscar has. Oscar
okay,
can't propose much, but Oscar has veto power over damn near every breath is taken in Las Vegas. Okay? Don't ever forget that, Mark. It's the truth. Oscar Goodman is Las Vegas. This is a guy who was trusted with the mafia. Tony Spilatro could have brought down a huge chunk of the mafia. That's why he ended up as a guy in Goodfellas. You know what I mean? Uh, um, and they trusted Mayor Oscar Goodman to undo the bad or stop the bad from getting any worse, and he did that. Oscar is our emperor. Oscar is
I
our kindly, benevolent, not dictator as much as potentate. Yeah, I think that's probably good for him. But
that
I
is
think he's
that is.
tremendous, and I do think I don't think that I don't think the Coliseum, Mark, was um, as again as well conceived as it could have been or should have been. I am not a big fan of the of anything. I don't care what league it is. Mr. Foley's talking about bringing in the NHL. You know, the Carolina Thrashers sold 10,000 season tickets in 7 minutes. We have yet to hit 10,000 in 7 months. The passion is for winners in Las Vegas. It doesn't matter if it's cockroach races. They want to see winners, and that's what the nucleus of Las Vegas. That's how we're wired here. So an NHL team, great. The Northerners will go in, and 3 years from now, if they're crappy, they're going to draw 6,500 people, which ain't going to pay the electric bill. And that's where they are in sports here in Las Vegas. So we have major league sports, Mark. There's no place on earth that can claim a major league like the UFC. If somebody wants hot now, it is the UFC, and we have it. We are it. We have not only the UFC, we have Tough Enough, the penultimate amateur mixed martial arts fighting happens in Tough Enough. Randy Couture trusted his son Ryan and his beginnings in MMA to Tough Enough. Ronda Rousey was trusted to Tough Enough. Barry Meyer, God bless him, started this thing, and when he took his life, Jeff Meyer took over for Barry Meyer and has not skipped a beat. If anything, Tough Enough is better. It was getting better every day. I do not want to take anything away from Barry. It was getting better every day that it was around before. But Jeff has picked up the ball that was laying there on the ground with Barry Meyer's untimely death. And Jeff has taken it, and we are the absolute epicenter of mixed martial arts. If somebody wants to do something smart, they'll say, hey, let's build a stadium that's convenient or conducive to televising and staging mixed martial arts events and call that our, let somebody try to dethrone us from this UFC mecca, which we could own. And also, let me see, what else could we do in there? Well, it could be big enough to play football. How about we build it for the Rebels? It doesn't have to hold 7 million people. 30,000 is good for right now, and put a roof on the thing, and they could, we can use it year round. And that's when we talk about stadiums, if those ideas aren't incorporated in there, Mark, I don't think anything's going to fly. It has to include UNLV, or they're doomed to crappy football for years and years and years, like they have been.
Well, that's one of my problems with Carolyn Goodman. Okay, when she didn't get her way, she said, "Fine, let's change the city charter so that nobody gets a stadium down there." And I think that that's a childish mentality. That would be a nice place for a stadium, but not that stadium.
I agree. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly, Mark. You never know what the underlying, again, It's almost like a bill that comes through Congress. Here's the bill to give fund for clean water in Mississippi, and as it goes through these different little machinations, all of a sudden it's got abortion, uh, criminalization attached to it. How the hell did that happen? I don't know, but that's just how politics works. Sometimes one thing is predicated upon another. So neither of us, and I don't think many, are privy to all those things, Mark. But
True.
I will say this: um, I can just damn near guarantee that there were other factors involved in the stadium going forward. Um, it did remind me a little bit of how things were pretty much always done here in Las Vegas. Olden days, two guys shook hands and they got it done, and we'll pass the legislation here next week. But you go ahead and get your tractors ready, and so things were a done deal. I think a lot of people thought this was a done deal, Mark. And Bob Beers stuck up, city councilman, who's a CPA, by the way, stuck up and said this accounting doesn't make sense. Oh well, we lost this. We had this much money and we lost it. We moved it over there and whatever, and it was like a $30 million difference, which is a hell of a lot of money when you have places without sidewalks
Yes.
in our city, and you have all the other things that money could be spent on. We have guys like my city councilman Bob Coffin, who looked at it and understood that it was not just a 100% good or 100% bad, that there was middle ground, but he was willing to move his position just to get it, because they came back with, from $150 million in public outlay, it came way down from that. So okay, if I get 70% off of something, I might be more interested in wearing that pink and orange suit that you have hanging over there than if I'm going to have to pay $100
Right.
for it.
Right.
So yeah, so that I think that was that decision. And then God bless her, Lois Tarkanian, who stood her ground. She and Mayor Goodman are close friends, and Lois did not see the benefit of it. She did not ever take one single small step backwards. And by the way, I spoke with her last week, and she would like us to get out the message to please vote. The municipal election's coming up, and if you have a vote and you don't vote, then you got no right to bitch.
That's
So
right.
that's
That's right.
that's how it works, right?
That's right.
You don't play the game, you don't make it a rules.
Hey, since we're talking stadiums, what's going on in LA with they have one stadium, two stadiums, no team, three teams?
Yeah, and the teams are the San Diego Chargers, the St. Louis Rams, and of course the Oakland, formerly LA, formerly Oakland Raiders. And all of it, the Chargers started in LA, then they moved to San Diego. The Rams started in Cleveland and ended up, I think they went Cleveland, then Chicago, then LA, then St. Louis now. And the Raiders, of course, started in Oakland, went to LA, now they're back in Oakland, now they're come back. Yeah, so anyhow, nobody wants to be in LA, then everybody wants to be in LA. It's the second biggest television market, and television is what drives the vehicle there. So they want to have football in LA, and they're going to have pro football in LA. They went to court, and oh my God, did they F with the Raiders and Al Davis, and probably cost him several years of his life that he didn't get back, even though he won, by trying to keep the Raiders from moving to LA. Now they got nobody. Hey Raiders, maybe we didn't mean it quite so much. Come on, you guys are viable. I, for one, think the Raiders belong in Oakland. I don't think they'll ever be a different. It's like when the Vikings started playing indoors, Mark. It changed the entire deal. The
Yep.
Raiders playing in Oakland. The black hole in L.A. is because people spilled caviar on their frickin' Bermuda shorts, while they were up at the sushi bar. It's not the same in L.A. as it is
Nope.
in Oakland. So. It's always interesting
Totally
to see
agree with
who's going to get there. There's also conjecture, Mark, that the NFL could expand, and they could get an expansion team. There are some teams that don't do as well as they could, even though they're in the NFL. But their whole deal is, which if the other sports were like this, they'd be better off. Every shares in the pie. So Green Bay can compete with the New York Giants, even though you look at the difference in metropolitan areas. I don't know if you want to call Green Bay, Wisconsin, a metropolitan area.
Yeah, she said.
But they make the same money because of the shared income. They have gone away from that a little bit. Jerry Jones has spearheaded that effort. His Cowboys are more valuable, and they do bring in more money than the Arizona Cardinals or whomever it might be. That's just not as popular as the Cowboys, which is most teams, And he said, "Hey, man, we're bringing more in. We want more," and so there is some validity to that argument. Although people go back to, well, you wouldn't have had your stuff wouldn't have been valuable in the first place had everybody else not adhered to the rules that said we share equally. Right. So they found some middle ground. But he did buy the stadium, and he is a billionaire now, at least on paper, because of the worth of the Cowboys. And guys like Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban, everybody bitches about them. They're in fucking Texas. It's not like I'm the first guy to discover that the Texans have some kind of egos going for them. So.
Well, when I was chauffeuring in Phoenix, when I was running my limousine company in Phoenix, A.G. Spanos was one of my clients.
Lucky you.
Actually, our relationship was very good. The guy was as smart as a freaking whip, and he would come into Phoenix to buy properties, and the guy's a shrewd negotiator. Holy cow! He. Oh God, I could tell you stories about him.
Nothing says you can't be a prick and be rich too, And guys that figure it out. Sometimes, I think people always say, "Oh, this guy doesn't act this way or doesn't act that way." Well, you know what? Floyd Mayweather doesn't act like you act because you're some schmuck making $30,000 a year. He acts like a guy who has a couple $100 million and is going to make another couple $100 million, and he can tell you to go screw yourself. And what are you going to do about it? You're not going to slap him, and you're not going to fine him enough to matter. And as long as he doesn't have to go to prison ever again, he's good. So, by the way, Wisconsin is now ahead of North Carolina, 71-70, with 42 seconds left. Just to give you a live update, and that, of course, is courtesy of Yahoo Sports.
Yes.
Notre Dame did, in fact, beat the crap out of Wichita State, 81-70. So Arizona and Xavier play at 10-17. Again, our friend Bobby the Owl thinks Arizona has a real shot if Kentucky goes down. But I don't think Kentucky's going down to West Virginia. But I don't think West Virginia's 13 points worse than Kentucky either. Kentucky's whole motivation is to win now. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, but obviously you've been around this a whole lot longer than I have. Is it just, these teams have made it to the big game, Basically it's their big game. Yeah. Is it just that by the time they get down to the 8, to the Sweet 8 here, that the pressure on them is just wearing them down? Yeah. Is this?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that, Mark. It's a mental thing, and you see guys that have to take people make me laugh when they bitch about Obama taking a vacation. Well, you bitch about the stuff he does when he's working. Maybe the guy got tired, and you can't have it both ways. Let the guy go shoot around the golf in Hawaii where he's from. He's the frickin' president of the United States. But yeah, I think the pressure does get to him, Mark. And again, one of the most dangerous opponents that they have in any tournament is the guys that have nothing to lose. West Virginia wasn't supposed to be here. They were certainly not thought to be an absolute elite team. Nobody marked that on their calendar and said, "Oh my God, here comes West Virginia," but they're playing Kentucky, and winner moves on, and so everything is on the line. And sometimes, if you just shove charcoal in everybody's butts that's out there playing. You'd have diamonds in a few cases. Guys get pretty puckered up, and it's unfortunate. They're kids, man. They're playing a freaking game. They're a kid. Games are meant to be won and lost. If somebody won them all, they wouldn't be fun anymore.
True.
So it is interesting. Wisconsin up 73-70, 23 seconds left. Now 74-70. Looks like the end for the Tar Heels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
which is stickier, cheese or tar? It looks like the cheese guy's going to 75.
Let's go ahead and wrap this up with arena football.
Arena football. Well, the Outlaws are playing, and they're the next generation or next team to come down the pike to play here in Las Vegas. I had the opportunity to talk to their newest wide receiver, and they traded a couple of Vince Neil's old guitars and a cocktail waitress to be named later to pick up this guy out of Coronado High School. His name's Tyson Poots, and he went to camp with the Dallas Cowboys. Was a very late cut of the Cowboys. Has played on several teams, including the Arizona Rattlers, who played in the championship game with him there. He's a wide receiver out of Coronado who also played defense, went to Southern Utah, and they really went way out of their way to score him. And this is a guy that's going to be a real ball player and always very, very entertaining. And we talked about he was a tremendous defensive player at Coronado High School, and I asked him how come his sacks went down so much when he got to college, and he said he had to choose one or the other, and they would have certainly allowed him to play safety or linebacker, but he thought it was a long-term injury type of deal that he took into consideration and just went for the offensive part. But I asked him, I said, what happens, man, when there's an interception? Because in arena ball there tends to be more turnovers than there are in regular football. And he said, oh yeah, I'm looking to pay back somebody. I'm looking for somebody to hit. I said, does it take long to turn it on? No, it happens immediately. So. Anyway, the Outlaws are playing here, Mark. They're not going to win the championship this year. There are some very, very good teams. This is a team that is coming together, and they're putting together their talent, and then I think that it's going to take them a while to see what they need to complement the talent that can actually play at this level. They have some real good help in some of the people that are associated with the Vegas Lions are certainly helping out, and hopefully it will be a two-way street between the Lions and the Outlaws and back and forth with player personnel. The Lions certainly are in position to be a feeder, a developmental group for the Outlaws. And so if you're a football fan, man, if you don't go out and watch the Outlaws, and then on April 11th, Mark, the Vegas Lions are playing at Sierra Vista High School, and that should be a wonderful game. They're playing the Arizona team. Again, if you don't like arena ball, you want to see real 11-man beat 'em up, smack 'em up, throw the ball up and down the field, run, the whole shooting match that you get. You can have it in April 11th, Sierra Vista High School for the Vegas Lions. Sponsored by Twin Peaks. By the way, how was the beer today? Have you ever drank a colder beer in your life, Mark?
Cold, and the view was marvelous.
And beer doesn't give you brain freeze. It's always been my experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I just don't notice it, buddy. Hey, man, always a pleasure, Mark. You've been listening to Good Sports on GoodSportsMedia.com. For Mark Anthony, I'm Rick Rosen. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week right here on Good Sports. Good night.
Good night.